Uh, Hi everyone, and welcome back to another Only One Hotspur podcast. We thought we would go for a North London derby special as well, while the limelight is around the fixture. So in this episode, we are going to be talking about matches, players who have stood out in North London derbies, and obviously goals themselves. It's going to be split into three different parts for you. Obviously, I'm joined by Wesley and Nelson, as you've probably seen on the preview and review. So I'll go straight in, and I'll come straight to you, Nelson. So what games have stood out for you in North London derby specials? You know, probably wouldn't have stood out as much for me and Wes for certain reasons. But, you know, that's why it's good to get your one out of the way.
Well, again, thanks for having me, guys, on the podcast. Again, I think, like I've said in the previous two, in the review and the preview, I think, for me, it is a biased opinion, but even if I was a neutral, just looking at it from a neutral perspective, I think the North London derby offers the most. I think it's the most entertaining derby in the league. I think it hands down beats United and Liverpool. I think United and Liverpool like to hold on to this history, but let's face it, like the North London derby, I think has a lot more. I think especially in this kind of 21st century that we've been able to view, that we've been able to be grateful to see all these North London derbies. I think it's definitely in this Premier League era, I think it's actually been the best derby in the league. So in terms of matches that stand out to me, the first one, I know. Obviously, I'd be biased to pick the ones that Arsenal won, but the one that stands out to me is the famous 4-4 draw at the Emirates Stadium in 2009. I think 2009. That game in itself. Oh my gosh! I went through the motions watching that game. I think if I speak from a neutral perspective, I think it was sensational in terms of the goals, in terms of the drama, everything that you'd want in a derby. But then obviously as an Arsenal fan, seeing the ball come to Modric, you're like, okay, there's nothing he's going to do here from like 30 yards. Bangs in a shot that hits the post, and then it comes to probably the one, I think, a guy who menaced us for like the last, I think, during that period, I think between 2008 and 2011 to 12, he tormented us in North London derbies. You have Aaron Lennon pops out of nowhere, like, Lennon! Whoa! What, like... like, I couldn't believe it, but obviously Martin Tyler, commentary-wise, it's one for the ages. I think that one will never get old. It had everything you want, like, I can't remember how the game went in terms of who was leading, but obviously we blew away, I think, a 4-2 lead for you guys to now draw. So that for me, I think, is number one in terms of drama. It just had everything in that side. I think that's my favourite one in terms of Arsenal football. I think my least favourite one was when you guys smacked us in the semi-final, 5-1. That was my least favourite. Because I think before that, I think we had held a record for you guys that lasted, I think, 11 years, where you guys didn't beat us in the North London derby. I can't remember. And then for that to happen, I had to question whether I was alive or not, because I was like, this is not the norm. This was not the norm. So the fact that you guys won, I was like, rah. And you guys, I think it was the year you guys actually went on to win the trophy against Chelsea. So I got to give credit where credit's due. We were absolutely pants. We were pants. We were pants that day. You guys totally smacked us, and I think that will live long in the memory of Arsenal and obviously you guys. So that was my least favourite one. But in terms of in the middle, that, you know, in terms of an Arsenal victory that has stood out to me, I think I spoke about this. This one sticks out to me because of the atmosphere that day. I think it was the 4-2 victory that we had against you guys last season. I think that stood out to me because I think this was the first post-Wenger Tottenham North London derby. And as fans, I remember us just being excited because I think everyone was excited that we were in this post-Wenger era and everyone was looking. Obviously, we know where Emery is now. He's not in charge anymore. But I think just having that first it felt weird. It was a North London derby without Arsene Wenger at the helm, but I think I remember that atmosphere. That atmosphere reminded me of the nights that we had against Barcelona in 2011. And I just think everyone was so up for that, and it was the first time to see how we cope without Wenger. And I think you guys heading into halftime with a 2-1 lead, and then the only game that Aubameyang has turned up in when it's come to North London derbies, he managed to bag 2. But I think it was just the atmosphere. I could still feel it. And then Lucas Torreira getting that goal to get you. I think for any professional player to get your first goal in a derby, I think kind of capped it off. And I think that's why I remember it. That vibe, that atmosphere that day was perfect. So those are kind of like the 3 that stand out to me. But for sure, I think I would stick with the 4-4. I think sometimes, even though I'm an Arsenal fan, I like to view it from a neutral perspective, and that had everything. So I think I'll give it to that 4-4 draw. So I'll give it back to you boys and let you pick the ones that, where obviously I'm not really in. Yeah. I'll give it back to you.
Okay. Just on that 4-4 one quick. The RSPCA probably had so many calls in that night that Arsenal couldn't hold on to the lead. I thought I'd get that one out there quite quick. I thought you'd appreciate that. But yeah, Wes, I'll come over to you now. What ones have stood out for you?
I think, similar to Nelson, those 2 positive results for Tottenham will always live long in the memory. I remember that 4-4 so well. I think I had training. I was playing, for a local grassroots team. I had training, and it's one of those where I'm always like, if I can't watch the game, like, please don't tell me the score and who scored and everything like that. And I think I had a drinks break, and my dad has gone, or one of the parents has gone, yeah, it's 1-0. Bentley scored from 50 yards. And I remember the song that preceded that, which was, Bentley from 50 and Lennon from 2. But yeah, came home and obviously watched the game and doing my hair, pulling my hair out, doing my piece when Arsenal were going flooding forward and scoring, and we've got no answer with the Scottish Cafu at right back and Vedra and Corluka at centre half. But I must say, a goal that goes underrated in that game, and I know we're going to talk about goals in another part, but Genius's goal is very underrated in that game. But that sheer emotion of the anticipation when Modric has got the ball, then he's hit it off the post. Lennon, as Nelson said, the commentary was great. You saw the soccer special. It was a midweek fixture, soccer special with Phil Thompson afterwards. You see those, and he's gone like, like he's gone absolutely mental, right? And yeah, I had a friend who lived at the bottom of my road, and he always used to come over and watch the games with us, and that me, my dad, and him went absolutely mental because we were 4-2 down in injury time. There was 4 minutes injury time, and I actually think that was the making of us under Harry, but also the making of nervousness, because I don't think there's been many games actually that you kind of that had gone before and you were a bit nervous about having 4 minutes of injury time. So I think that was a massive factor in that. The 5-1, I mean, that was one of the best ones for me. For some bizarre reason, I had the day off school. I was ill, but because that was cup semi-final, so it was over 2 legs, and as a family that we know that quite well, and we done a thing where Arsenal hosted us, so me and my dad went to their house, and then when it was Tottenham, they came over to us, and I remember that first leg in that game, and they gave us a sofa, and that was it. But I made like my front room, I kitted it out with every bit of Tottenham memorabilia, all the scarves, flags, everything, and just didn't give them, we gave them somewhere to sit, of course we did, but we just didn't let them have anywhere to put anything. It was one of those where they sort of knew they were coming into a Tottenham household, And don't get me wrong, they're nice people, so we welcome them in with open arms. But just to sort of let them know, who was the real boss, if you like. And that was a glory night for us. We'd had a horrendous season that season, really. Under Martin Jol, and stuff. So yeah, to have that moment in that particular season was fantastic. And as Nelson said, and as we all know, we went on to win the trophy, and it ended up being unfortunately for us the last one that we have won in terms of major trophy. But a game that there's another two that I want to mention that stick out for me, for mixed reasons. The first one, obviously, that the one that pains us probably the most is the Invincible, or when they went and were crowned champions at the Lane in that Invincible season. That was hard to take. That was very hard to take, and stuff. So I won't brush over that too much. But my first North London derby as well was a 2-2, and Gina scoring in injury time. I remember that game so well. My first North London derby, as I say, and just feeling the whole atmosphere of a North London derby for the first time, being in the ground was something so special. I was going 1-up with a Robbie Keane header, and then them turning it round. Adebayor, I think, scored because he loved the North London derby as well, didn't he, Adebayor? And stuff. So yeah, there was, and then just you're getting them like mouthing off. I was actually Park Lane upper at the old White Hart Lane. There, so fairly close to the away fans. And yeah, you got them gobbing off and giving it all and stuff like that. And I actually remember there was a guy sitting a couple of rows in front of me and my dad and some Arsenal fans giving it, and this guy just stood up and he was massive, like he was huge, just didn't stop getting bigger, and he's basically told this Arsenal fan to like pipe down, and this Arsenal fan wasn't having it, so the guy ripped his shirt off, and he was, mate, if that's a body I would die for, put it that way. He's absolutely shredded. Right, and then the Arsenal fan quietly just sank lower and lower and lower into his chair. But yeah, I think to have it kind of, and it's always one of those when in any game when you score a last-minute goal, whether it's draw the game or even win the game, if it's to draw, it always feels like it's a bit of a win because it is the nature of it, last minute and whatnot. So that one almost felt like a bit of a win, even though we didn't get the win. But yeah, to taste that for the first time as a young lad was brilliant, really. And I think, I also have to mention, I know I mentioned there was two, but I can't look past the 1-0 win at Wembley in our full season at Wembley, because that was probably one of the best performances I've seen from Tottenham as a team. And I know we're going to go on to players and stuff in another part, but I'd just shout out Moussa Dembele that day because he was immense. He's greatest of all time. So, and everybody knows my love for Moose, but that game, that atmosphere was electric. You couldn't hear Arsenal fans singing for love nor money. We fully bossed that game, and Kane's header was a really good header as well, and stuff. And yeah, that one sticks out for me as well because we were so dominant, and the fans and the atmosphere was that electric that day as well. That's one I won't forget. But yeah, Joe, I don't know if I've covered all of yours as well, or if there's a couple that you want to mention.
Yeah, I do have a couple more. To be fair, and the first one I'm going to go to is when we beat them 3-2 away. Obviously, good old Eunice football. But it's just like being 2-0 down yet again. Probably RSPCA calls. But I just think I just remember it so well. Like I remember when Van der Vaart scored that penalty. Like yeah, you know, Wes, you know my love for that guy is absolutely unreal. And like I just loved it how he then went. He was going to go running over to the, you know, straight over to the Tottenham fans. He went, "No, I'll go this way." Actually, you know, as he's going past the Arsenal fans, yeah, little shush, mate. And then I just remember when we scored, obviously that late winner. Like I just went absolutely mental. Like it was just, I just remember it now. Like just running around the house, just doing my mum's head in. Like she couldn't cope with how happy and excited I was. She was thinking, "Oh my god, like what's going on here?" But then also, I think you can't look past the last ever North London derby at the Lane. Like,
Yep.
you know, I think that's one what, you know, might have been a bit overlooked, because that day I think we was never ever going to lose that game, ever going to lose that game. I think the players were like, "We are winning this game no matter what. We are doing this." Obviously, you know, Dele and Kane scoring. You know, Kane was always going to score that day as well. Like, I think, you know, to go down in the history books, I think probably before the game they probably would have been like, "Look, we are winning this game no matter what. We are not having Arsenal in the history books for the last ever North London derby win at the ground, and we can't be having that." And I think that's something what the players really stood for, and I think Harry Kane obviously wanted him on the history books as well. And I think, you know, that's massive, because obviously, you know, they did win the league at the Lane as well, which always hurts us Tottenham fans. But you know, we can always say, you know, at least they didn't win on the last ever North London derby, or else that would have really hurt, I think, as well. And also, while we're on that, I might as well just quickly mention, I'm really glad that we did win yesterday as well, just because obviously if Arsenal would have won, they would have been the first to win at the new ground, wouldn't they? And we can't be having that now. But you know, they're two what really stand out for me. What haven't been mentioned, obviously the 4-4, unreal. David Bentley, Jesus Christ, teach me. That is technique, and it's just, just the emotion what you saw, you know, when Lennon scored, it was just, it's unexplainable, isn't it? The feeling you get, you know, when you score a last minute winner or when you score a last minute equaliser in like a game like that, is unexplainable. Obviously the 5-1 win, you can't ever look past that. But I think there's been so many games what have been so good to watch. Like there was that 3-3 one at the Lane. You know, you've had some very good, entertaining games in North London derbies, and I really agree with Nelson that I personally think the North London derby is superior to any other derby in England. Just the emotion you get, I think, just the pure emotion you get from the fans, from the players themselves. Players always seem to know it does mean that bit more, and it's just great to see. And I think I absolutely love it. Like when it is a North London derby day as well, you do sort of wake up and you've got that extra bounce in you. You know, you're thinking, "Oh yeah, you know, it's North London derby day. Come on, let's have it." You see any Arsenal fan, you tell them to do one. You know, it's just a great day, unless if you lose. But you know, I think we're quite lucky in the games that we have seen, even from neutral points of view. Obviously, none of us are neutral, but I think that's a good point from Nelson. I think, you know, if you do talk to any other fan, they always say like North London derby games are good as well. It's one what I think everyone looks out for when the fixtures come out, and I cannot wait to go to obviously the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium to watch a North London derby there again, just because. Well, yeah, it'll be amazing. I think the atmosphere will be unreal. But I just a quick one as well. I remember my first North London Derby experience of actually going to a game. I'll just brush over this one quickly though. I believe it is a League Cup game. I know it's definitely a cup game, and we lost 2-1. And I just remember it was just. I think I've tried to sort of wipe most of that away from my memory. You know, when you lose, but I always remember. You know, you could just tell that it was that bit more fiery and everything, even after the game. Because whenever I go, I always wait till it sort of clears a bit, and then that way you're not rushing them, you know, against people. And I just remember that was when the Arsenal fans started tearing down parts of the boarding around the stadium. So I remember that, and I just remember going to my dad, "Oh, look what they're doing." He was like, "Yeah, that's not surprising one bit, you know. It's Arsenal, remember." But yeah, I think we've covered the games there. To be fair, quite well, lads.
I think there are a few more. There are a few more that stand out. I think you know, Danny Rose's debut. That particular game will always, you know, that will always stand out for me. I was away and watched it in a pub and met some people whilst I was away, and they were really, really close. But half of them were Tottenham, and the other half were Arsenal. So we all went and watched it together. And then when Danny Rose did that, that was incredible. And we've, you know, me, my dad, people that we were, we've all jumped up and celebrated. And sort of where we was in the pub was sort of two fruit machines and then sort of two Arsenal fans in front of them. And they sort of turned around and were a bit surprised to see probably Spurs fans, and also I was celebrating in the way that we did, and then Bale scoring again. That was you know, a one where we celebrated, and then when Arsenal pulled one back, they tried to celebrate again and try and give it some, and we were like, "We're 2-1 up, mate. Like, chill out." Do you know what I mean? But no, that game was a really, really good game as well. And I also think last season's one in the cup. You know, I think we've brushed on it before in a couple of other episodes, but yeah, no, I think that particular one was a really, really good game. And I think that, you know, for Tottenham was a massive, massive game because they'd, as Nelson said, that 4-2, it was in that season, so they'd stuffed us earlier on in the season. And I remember Danny Rose's interview after the game saying, you know, players have been at Arsenal for 5-10 minutes and they're, you know, getting ahead of themselves. So, you know, we use that as motivation, and, you know, we wanted to put them in their place. And I'm just like, yes, Danny Rose, that's the kind of stuff I want to hear from you. So yeah, that was a massive, massive game. And I think for us to go there and turn them over was good. But I think as well, like in the last decade, I think the games have become a lot closer. Because I think, you know, Tottenham have closed the gap on Arsenal massively. But I think because they are a bit closer, it means there's more fire, there's more passion in the games. And I think that's where you do see the brawls in that, you know, from that 4-2 game and stuff. And, you know, those fiery tackles and things like that. So yeah, those are games that I definitely forgot to mention, that I probably should have mentioned. Like I say, there's so many games, really. There's so many good games that stand out for different reasons. I'm sure Nelson's probably now going to remember those 5-2s and remind us all of those as well.
Yeah, no, I remember the 5-2. That was the same day, and I think it was a Carling Cup final between Liverpool and Cardiff. But I think our game trumped theirs because it was a boring Carling Cup final, and our game had just had everything. And you guys were up 2-0. I remember Adebayor scoring. But yeah, no, enough about no. But what I wanted to talk about was what you mentioned, Wes, about the point about the fact that yes, I agree that you have closed the gap. So the last 10 years, there's been more fire to those games. But for me personally, I'm looking forward to the next decade of games where I think, instead of it just being between Tottenham versus Arsenal, two North London sides, I think there's going to be an added incentive or something that's going to be, I think, something where both clubs are going to be fighting for something. I think the only one that was close to it was the 2015-16 season where Leicester won the title, where we were both actually, in the top half of the table. We were actually close to actually winning the league. But I think we're going to get to a point. For me, I'm dreaming of a Tottenham Arsenal Champions League final. That would be for that. I can see that happening. And also, basically, my point is where we're actually fighting for major trophies. I think those games as well. I think those games will be ones that will definitely be in the archives for many years. So I think we'll probably get a title decider in the next decade or so, or the next years to come, or a Champions League final, or even a cup final, your FA Cup or your Carabao Cup. So I think that's what I'm looking forward to most. Just because I think we've gone through the races with so many different types of North London derbies where we're fighting for European places, or we're fighting for, just kind of bragging rights. But I think the derby's ready to evolve to that next stage. Yeah. Now these two sides are fighting for major trophies, so I can't wait for that to happen. I just wanted to add that in there. Put that in there.
Yeah, I think that's you're being quite optimistic there. So I think that's fair to say. But no, I agree. I agree to a point. I think obviously, over the next few decade, I reckon there could be a cup final. I might not go as far to saying Champions League final, but I think definitely maybe like an FA Cup, Carabao Cup final, and how I could just imagine the atmosphere building up to the game. If we, obviously if Tottenham win, the emotions, the bragging rights you've got there would just be phenomenal. Obviously, if Arsenal went on and won, I'd have to go into hiding, probably move to Mexico or Canada off the top of my head. But I think I do agree with that. I think over the next 10 years, I think we will be fighting, even if it's just for like last season. I just want to add this in. Fighting for the Champions League places, and then Aubameyang absolutely bottled it. Missed the penalty. I don't want to, as I said, in the preview, I think it was. I don't want to rub it in too much. Apart from that, I do. But I think even that game, even though it was a 1-1 draw, you sort of felt how important it was, and in that race for that top four, which I think is fair to say. But I do agree that I think we are going to see a little bit more of that, even if it is just fighting for the Champions League places, maybe even like a Europa League final. I think that could be more realistic than a Champions League final, to be fair, seeing that neither of us are actually in European spots at the minute. But yeah, I do agree with you. I think over the next 10 years, it's going to be another interesting phase for North London derbies. But yeah, moving on from the matches, and we'll go into players. Okay, so this is like part 2 of it. So players who have stood out for us in North London derbies, whether or not it's for just a collective performance in one game, or whether or not it's performances overall. I think this could be quite an interesting one. And Wes, I'll come to you first on this one. Obviously, you sort of hinted at one earlier on, and I know exactly who's going to come straight away. It's literally the person who you probably have dreams about every night. So I'll let you.
I miss Moussa Dembele every day of my life. My goodness, this guy, my greatest of all time. His performance in the game at Wembley was one of the best that I have ever seen. He marshalled a 3-man Arsenal midfield on his own. He marshalled a 3-man midfield on his own. It was ridiculous. Like Xhaka, Wilshere, Ozil, he just had them all on strings. He had them all in his pocket. You name it, he had it. Yeah, he was immense that day. I think also Nelson will remember this game really well. The 1-1 draw in our final season at White Hart Lane, but the 1-1 draw at the Emirates, where Moussa Dembele won won a penalty, and stuff like his drive to win that penalty was fantastic, and that game again, it meant what a player he was for us, and yeah, he just bossed it. And I remember Nelson coming out with a funny comment in that particular game when it was all kicking off and stuff as well, where we were watching it, everyone was just in hysterics for that one. But yeah, that was just ridiculous. Like Ben Dembele's performances in North London derbies were, especially those couple, were amazing. I think we can't also look past one man, a Dutchman, who just got it. He got. Not only did he just got us, and we got him, and we all fell in love with him. And it's Rafa van der Vaart, because it's just Rafa. He just got it, and that's all I can. But the passion he showed in North London derbies, the edge that he put into the games. I remember there was always talk of Arsenal fans being Arsenal fans. Wilshire's better than Van der Vaart, and we're like, no, Rafa van der Vaart's played for Real Madrid, like, well, you know what I mean, like, yeah, and all of this kind of thing. And it was just like, I remember the 3-3 draw, actually, Joe, that you mentioned. It was like Rafa put Wilshere in his place a little bit with a cheeky nutmeg and stuff like that. But he stepped up in those games like 100%. He, as a player, he was fantastic for us. Gave us what we needed at that time. That added flair, and that added passion, grit, determination, as well. But he loved the North London derby. His goals. The free kick for Kabul's header. I mean, he probably shanked the life out of it, but it worked out well for us. So yeah, no, definitely Rafa is always, when you speak about players in North London derbies, Rafa's always in the equation there. A player as well who I think deserves a mention. I did mention him earlier, was Emmanuel Adebayor. He played for both clubs, but like the guy's just turned up. Like, especially in an Arsenal shirt, he just turned up, and it was really annoying and really frustrating, because he wasn't like, Adebayor was, as we all know, right, as a striker, was so frustrating, but he just turned up for 2 games a season minimum, and it was Tottenham at home and Tottenham away, especially when he was at Arsenal, and he'd destroy us at times. He was unplayable. So yeah, Adebayor definitely. I remember one goal that he scored, and I think Fabregas wraps it into him. He pops it up and lashes the life out of the ball into the corner. And I remember actually trying to recreate that goal. It was that good. The level of ability that Adebayor had, like I said, was like, if he actually could be bothered, like, he would have been a world beater. He would have been a world beat. We'd be speaking about him in the same breath as people talk about Drogba, and one of the real elite strikers of the Premier League era. But for me, I think when he come to Spurs, it was one of those that he couldn't really be bothered. So we didn't really. I don't think that Spurs really saw the best of Adebayor, which is unfortunate. But yeah, I think, like I say, from an Arsenal perspective, he always turned up in North London derbies for sure. But as we know as well, there's one man in our current team that always turns up, and that's Harry Kane. I know he didn't score in the most recent one, but he turns up usually in the derby games, scores important goals as well. I think everybody knows the two, especially with the header, which actually is a fantastic header. And yeah, I mean, his goal, the one that's curled round and hit the post and gone in. I mean, I've never heard White Hart Lane that loud. like that ever. I've never heard it like that. That was ridiculous. So but yeah, like you said, Joe, he always wanted to be in on the act on the final one, and it was one of those that's written in the script, kind of thing, for Harry Kane to be in that reckoning there. For it just felt like fate. He had to score. I think Delhi has turned up in North London derbies as well with his performances, some really good goals as well. But I think his work rate as well in North London derbies goes unnoticed. Like, he puts a shift in. Don't get me wrong. So yeah, I think there's so many over time, but those ones as well really stand out. But I think as well, again from an Arsenal perspective, Cesc Fabregas.
Yes,
thank you. I mean, in one of my, it might have been the first North London derby that I went to. He started on the bench, and he came on for Freddie Ljungberg, and he single-handedly changed the game at the age of 19 years of age, I believe. And I just couldn't believe it. Like, he's 19, he's come off the bench in a North London derby and has controlled the game and changed the game. I was just there like, wow. What a player. As we all know, Cesc was a fantastic midfield player. But yeah, he turned up in those derby games for sure. He got it. He understood what it meant to the Arsenal fans. Popped up with some important goals. And actually, I think in the same game that Adebayor scored the worldie, Fabregas hits an absolute rocket. Like, an absolute rocket in that game. And it was like, I think they were having their own goal of the season contest, like, in that game. I'm so glad that social media wasn't about or as prevalent back then, because that'd have been shoved in our faces like you wouldn't believe.
True.
So yeah, I think Fabregas was always a big player for Arsenal in North London derbies. Like I say, he turned up. He understood the emotion of the game. He got what it meant for the fans and stuff like that. So yeah, Cesc 100%. Like I say, there's one game that stands out, and he's just absolutely changed it, and I couldn't believe it. I'll always remember him driving through like a knife through butter and scoring just after we conceded one goal. And game was on Sky. They had to cut the replay short because that was happening, and every Spurs fan was probably a few expletives there, and pulling their hair out at that one as well. So yeah, those are the players for me that have really sort of stood out in North London derbies over that I mean, there's probably others, like from Spurs, like Ledley King and Michael Dawson. Whenever they played, they gave 100% and stuff like that. But yeah, and I mean, the great man, as Nelson will call him, Thierry, his wonder goal, which I still wonder how Matty Etherington doesn't pull him down on the halfway line. I still think about that daily. So yeah, but no, Thierry again was one that turned up. But I think by and large, especially in the last sort of 10 years or so, those guys have really stepped up and made a difference in North London derbies, and that's what you want from players, really.
Yeah, I think you're quite right there, Wes, with the players you've mentioned. Before I go on to mine, I'll come over to you, Nelson. To what players have really stood out to you in North London derbies for either side?
Man's ready. So let me get started with the Tottenham perspective. There are a few Tottenham players that stand out in mind. I agree with Wes with Moussa Dembele. I've always admired him as a player, and I don't know how. Like, when I first saw him at Fulham, I was like, "Who is this gem of a baller?" And I was disappointed when he went to you guys, because I actually thought it was a downgrade at the time. But he's obviously performed. Like, when I mean a downgrade, I just thought he would have gone to a top club. That's all. I thought he deserved to be at that point in his career to go to. But he perform for you guys. And as a result of his performances, I think you guys elevated and evolved as a football club. So, like, Musa definitely stands out. That Wembley performance, he definitely shut us up for that game. And I think he had a lot more of a performance. Like, I remember the game that Wes talked about very vividly when we were at the bar and we were watching the game, the 1-1 draw, and I just come out of nowhere and I just like, dash it. I was so angry, and I think everyone had turned to see like who said that. Everyone looked at us, and that's a memory between myself and Wes that we'll remember. But you've also got Harry Kane, all-time top goal scorer in North London derbies. I don't think no one's going to beat his record for quite a while, because how old is he? 25 still, and he's still got time to add to that record. I think he could break 20. I honestly think he could break 20 goals, and that's a lot of goals in one derby. So Harry Kane's always turned up for your games. Before Harry, you had another talisman who decided to go Super Saiyan for like 2 or 3 seasons. Man like Gareth Bale, like, he turned up for games. I remember his goal when you guys won. I think it was 2-0 or 2-1 when Lennon put him through, and he scored outside of the boot. That's a difficult finish for any football player. That's a difficult finish outside of the boot into the bottom corner. And he scored a couple of goals away, even though we had won the game, I think 4-2 and 5-2 respectively. He still scored, and I think they were with his right foot. People underestimate Bale's ability to use his weak foot. So Bale definitely turned up in those games. So Harry and Gareth Bale for me are two that definitely stand out. And then, Wes already talked about Van der Vaart. I was going to mention him if no one had said his name. Van der Vaart was a baller, absolute baller. I wanted him on my team. He was an absolute baller. So again, that's why I just don't get some Arsenal fans when they say that Wilshere was there at the time. I'm sorry, Van der Vaart was a baller. So that's kind of my Tottenham perspective in terms of who stood out to me in North London derby. So you got Musa, Harry Kane, Gareth Bale, and Van der Vaart. From an Arsenal point of view, like, I think I'm happy Wes has mentioned a few of them. Thierry Henry. I think Thierry Henry only stood out in a couple of games. I don't think North London derby was his thing compared to like someone like Adebayor, who really knew like what it meant. Not that I'm saying that Thierry Henry didn't know what it meant to the fans, but I think Adebayor just turned up with his goals and performed on there. I think Henry, for me personally, I think Henry was a bit of he hated United, I think, more than he hated Tottenham. I think because he performed a lot more against teams like United and City and Chelsea. So nothing to take away from what he's done at the club. I'm just saying that I think Adebayor sticks out. Cesc Fabregas, that game. I think that's the 5-4 game you're talking about, Wes, where he came on. I think was it the one when he was nine?
It was the 2-2, I believe. It might have been that one, but no. Again, he came on in that 5-4 game and was immense as well. Like, yeah.
The 5-4. I think that reverse pass to Ljungberg is one that sticks out to me. That goal, like, for somebody of his caliber, like at that age that you mentioned, 19 years, So Fabregas stands out to me. I've got a few other players that I can think of right now. Theo Walcott. Theo Walcott doesn't get talked about a lot, but I think Theo Walcott. I think Wes knows what putting his head in his hands, because there was one game in particular where he stood out, and it was the FA Cup. It was that FA Cup game where he absolutely. I think it was the season where Wenger deployed him as a lone striker in the middle, and he was finally getting his chances down the middle, because I think for the first 6 or 7 years of the club, we had no idea where he would play, whether it was the right, the middle. You could say he could play in goal. I had no idea where he would play for Arsenal, but he bagged that day, and he went off injured, but everyone remembers what had happened as he was stretchered off. Probably something that will live in long memory of Arsenal fans, and something that you guys obviously hate him for. But he actually turned up in a number of fixtures. The 5-2 performance, where I think it was the same day as the Carabao Cup final. He turned up. He scored 2 that day. One was a delicate chip, and the other was a shot across goal. he also turned up in another one where I think we also beat you. I think it was 5-2 the next season. You guys had a black and grey away kit. I don't know if you remember that season.
Yeah.
I think that season kind of was brushed under, but Santi Cazorla also had a great performance that game. I forgot to mention him too, but no, Theo Walcott stands out to me. He also knew what it meant to the fans. And Ramsey, he also knew what it meant, and we all know what he said to Dyer last season as a result of Dyer trying to shush. I don't get it, but, Ramsey shut him up, and that he's a hero. And I think as a club, we are actually witnessing how bad we miss Aaron Ramsey. Just like you guys mentioned how for yesterday's game, you could tell that you needed a little bit of bite from Dele and Eric Dyer. I think Ramsey understood that, and we've missed his goals from midfield completely. Like, I don't know why we sold him, and he's not even getting a look in at Juventus. You've got someone like Adrian Rabiot who's coming in ahead of him. So, Ramsey stands out to me. And in terms of nostalgia, like the old legends, don't forget Thomas Rosicky. Rosicky loved the game against you guys. That goal.
Oh, it's the only game he played in. What are you on about?
No, he hit that game. He hit that rocket. I'll never forget Martin Tyler's commentary. Rosicky! It was brilliant. And you've got the game where we won 5-2. He scored to make it 3-2. But no, Rosicky. And then the two that stand out to me, in my opinion, from an Arsenal perspective, is Robert Pires and Patrick Vieira. These two Frenchmen turned up in these games. Pires seemed to love a goal against you guys. Yeah. He absolutely loved the goal against you guys. And Vieira knew how this much, as the captain of the club, probably, on par, 1A, 1B in terms of greatest Arsenal captains. He knew what it meant. And he wouldn't score for a good 20 games, but when it came to North London Derby, he would somehow just burst through the middle of the park and just score a goal. I'll never forget. Obviously, we'll move on to goals, but I've pretty much remembered it already. But that counter where he scored from that counter in the 5-4 victory, that was just immense. That's just, yeah. So I'm gonna end it there and say Robert Pires and Patrick Vieira. Those are the players from an Arsenal perspective that stood out to me. But I'll let you finish off, Joe, and give your view.
I think I'll get the Arsenal players out of the way quickly because obviously I want to. For me, I think Fabregas. I think anyone who says Fabregas wasn't a baller, or he still is a baller technically, but when he was in his Arsenal and Chelsea days, particularly, he was just phenomenal at times. He always turned up against us. He hated us. We hated him. It's a hate-hate relationship. But his quality is just unreal. You can hate a player but still appreciate their ability. And I think I do believe that is someone who fans sort of respect because of their ability, but can't stand him just because it's him. I think he didn't really necessarily always stand out in North London derbies, but if we're on Arsenal players, I do just want to say how great Santi Cazorla was. What an absolute baller. Obviously, he did turn up the odd few times against us, but he was just an absolute baller. I just have to give a quick mention to him, I have to admit. But Adebayor, when he was in his Arsenal days, he would just score goals and goals and goals against us. Just really frustrating. But yeah, I think I'll move on to they're players who really stand out. But I'm going to move on already to Tottenham players. And for me, Wes, I know you know how much I love this guy. How much I love him. Rafa van der Vaart, is literally just a beautiful guy. He is just his technique, his passion, everything about him. He is probably, obviously he was only at the club for a few years, but he's probably my favourite Tottenham player I've ever seen, in my lifetime. He is up there just because of his pure passion. When he scored, I think it was the 3-3 game when he scored, literally just straight over to the Arsenal fans. Yeah, have some of that, mate. He always just gave it. He always just let them know, and I think it's just something about Van der Vaart. He was just magical. It was like our Santa. It was just like, I don't know, like it was just pure magic, and everything. Every time he got the ball, you just thought, what's he gonna do? You knew something was coming, and I just love the guy. Like, I'd love to meet him. If I met him, I'd literally just probably talk to him about how much he hated Arsenal and how much he loved the club and the games against Arsenal. It was just one person I would love to meet and talk to as well. I absolutely love the guy. One who we haven't said yet, and I think this is one who goes under the radar in these games, but he has come up some very important goals in the game. I think we've mentioned him for scoring a goal and that, but he hasn't been mentioned in a players bit, and that's good old JJ. He did always turn up. He always turned up against Arsenal. In the 4-4 game, he was really good. That he was the player to open the scoring, I believe, in the 5-1 game, wasn't he?
Yeah.
And I'm pretty sure he scored away as well, didn't he? Or he set it up at least. I think I've got the assist, or. And when it came to Tottenham Arsenal, he was always just on it. He was on it. And, I think a lot of Tottenham fans, he's one of those who go under the radar sort of thing. But when it came to North London derbies, he always just turned up. And I just want to give him a great credit in there. Because he just did. He popped up with good goals. He always worked hard. I'm pretty sure he got another one, maybe when it was like a 2-2 or something like that, or he got like an
in the
assist.
bottom corner.
He always just turned up. Yeah, exactly.
That was the game I was on about earlier.
Yeah, exactly. Like the amount of goals he actually pops up with in a North London derby does go unnoticed. I think obviously you can't look past Kane either. Absolute baller. He's literally just got, he lives rent free in Arsenal's head, I think. They come out going, oh yeah, he's actually Arsenal and everything. Well, behave, mate. Shut up. He's not. Absolutely love the guy, but I just think, obviously, Moussa Dembele. I think you two gave enough on him. There's not much else you can say apart from that. He's just Moussa Dembele, like absolute baller. But yeah, I'd say those are my players who really stick out to me. As you said, obviously you did have the Ledley King performances in there. You had the Michael Dawson performances in there, who were just solid, who would not let them have anything. Who would battle and battle and battle till the last whistle. And I think that they're the real players who really stand out for me. Obviously, Lennon as well. We always liked a game against Arsenal as well. Bale, yeah. But I think the ones who I've given a special mention really, really stand out for me, especially Rafa. I love the guy. If I hadn't said it enough, I just thought I'd throw that one in more. If anyone who's listening knows Rafa van der Vaart, please get in contact.
Same if they know Moussa Dembele, by the way.
Yeah, but priority Rafa van der Vaart, please. I the smile on my face while talking about the guy. I've never felt this happy in my life. But anyway, moving on from my love fest. We'll go into the goals. I'm sure he'll pop up again, don't you worry. And if he doesn't, I'll make sure he pops up again. So yeah, Nelson, I'll come to you first on this one. What goals for you have really stood out?
Well, two that have really popped up in my mind, and they're actually not Arsenal goals; they're Tottenham goals.
He's literally a closet Tottenham fan, by the way. I'm positive of.
I'm genuinely surprised Nelson didn't mention Son in his players as well, because that is a bromance that needs to happen.
Look, he's just a wonderful human being. Like, his smile is so... When he smiles, don't tell me that you don't want to, like, just hug him. Like, he's a... Anyways, yeah, there is a secret bromance going on between me and Son. Like, but I think of David Bentley's goal in the 4-4, like, for him to just pull off the audacity to just do that. And knowing that he was one of us as well, I think is quite bitter as well. It's a bittersweet kind of thing. But it was, technique-wise, it was brilliant to be able to pull that off on Lord Armenia from how many yards that he did that. Another goal that stands out is Jermaine Defoe's goal in the 5-4 victory. I've replayed that goal over and over again because of where he picks the ball from, starts dribbling. But if you notice the way he shoots that ball, it's like the ball's just slightly behind him. So there's very little backlift that he's got to, the amount of power that he's able to generate. And we all know how much of a great finisher Defoe is. So that one where it just goes top bins, and I'm just like, yeah, that those two stick out to me. Obviously, you can mention Jermaine Genius's goal in the 4-4 draw. His left foot as well to curl that into the far corner. That was a brilliant goal. As well. So those three kind of stick out in mind. And then from an Arsenal perspective, we've obviously got a ton of goals, but I won't even delve into much detail with them. But one that recently just happened yesterday was a great goal from Lacazette. Lacazette scored an absolute banger, and I forgot to mention him. He was an honourable mention for one of my players as well, in terms of turning up for North London derbies, because he seems to, for a foreign player to come and quickly understand what it means, I think that's what fans love, when you have your foreign players that just actually know what it means. So Lacazette's goal was great. I think Wes already mentioned it, but Thierry Henry's solo goal was a brilliant goal. That's probably one of my favourites, especially with the commentary from Clive Tilsley. I've seen that over and over and over again. Vieira's counter-attacking goal, I think just the pure class and quality, and the fact that Arsenal players knew each other that well to make those runs. I think that just I love counter-attacking goals are just beautiful to see. So that was a brilliant goal from Vieira. There's a lot that you could choose from. Adebayor and Fabregas in the same game as Wes mentioned, goal of the season. You know, Fabregas puts that top bins, and then Adebayor just decides, okay, I'll flick it up instead, but put it in the same corner you put it in. That in itself was top quality. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot to choose from. There's actually a lot to choose from. I forgot to mention Danny Rose. Danny Rose actually scored a world beater. I'm looking at it from a neutral perspective because I love to see goals. So the technique that Danny Rose had to pull that off, and I felt like the ball moved for a few seconds before it went in. So credit to Danny Rose for that goal. There's a lot that I can mention. There's so much that I can mention. That Robin van Persie strike to bring it back to 2-2, where he curled it round like a bunch of Tottenham players. I don't know how he still managed to do that. There's a lot. I think there's a lot running through my head right now that it's hard to just pick one and focus on a couple. But those are the goals that I'm going to stick with so far. If there's any more, I'll probably bring after you guys have brought your suggestions in. But I'll go with those goals so far.
Go on then, Wes. Over to you, mate. What
What
ones stand out for you?
Simple. Every goal Rafa van der Vaart has scored against Arsenal.
Taking my limelight here.
No,
And you,
I think that quote is one of the most best. That's one of the top quotes I think I've ever heard from like a former Tottenham player in reference to the derby. And yeah, we've all said that how much Rafa understood, and it just leads on nicely from Nelson's point where he said about those foreign players coming in and just grasping it so quickly. And yeah, as we all know, Rafa just got us as people and as fans, but definitely got the game as well. Danny Rose's goal, I was literally going to mention it and was hoping that Nelson probably wouldn't, but he did. Because technique, everything is wrong with that goal, by the way, because Danny Rose is leaning so far back. It's like that. That shot should have actually ended up in top tier. You know, he's leaning so far, but he's actually doesn't make the cleanest of connections with the ball, yet it somehow just flies past Almunia. And that's just an unbelievable goal, and probably one that I go to a lot when people ask me about goals in North London derbies. Yeah, so there's that. As I mentioned earlier, the Fabregas Adebayor goals. You know, as it pains me to say it, but they are just unbelievable goals. One of Nasri's goals, much to my annoyance, but we did have Aurelio Gomez in goal. But that goal was actually a really, really well worked goal, and it was sort of all of Nasri's own work, which I think that goal is an underrated goal, but it's probably because from the restart, Fabregas goes on a bit of a maze up and slots one past Gomez as well. So there's obviously that goal. Henry's one, I think, you know, is a goal. Like I said earlier, still gives me nightmares. And I always, you know, I'm always squinting when watching it because I don't particularly want to see it too often. I think the goals in the cup game last season were two brilliant goals. Sonny off his left peg. I think that's just a beautiful, beautiful finish. And Dele's one. I mean, Harry Kane. How's your first two touches in a North London derby? No matter, you know, he's come off the bench. No matter what game, if it's a league game or a cup game, to have those first two as your touches in any it's great. And he's just put it on and it's just saying to Dele, "Come on, just finish me off." And just think it over the goalkeeper, which he did. And yeah, I think that goal was a really, really good goal. Yeah, again, there's been so many goals. It's hard to sort of remember. But I think the Pires goal from the reverse pass from Fabregas as well. I mean, Fabregas has sent us all to shops. He sold us the biggest dreams of our lives. For that one, because I genuinely didn't see that pass. How he's seen it, I do not know, but he's just done. And then Pires with the little shuffle up against Noé Pamaro, and then it's just slotted it in under Paul Robinson. I think that goal I was just there like, Fabregas, you are dirty for doing that. But yeah, I think there's been so many sort of good goals. It's hard to kind of keep on top of them. So yeah, I think Nelson's kind of covered most of the goals. But you know, I think those goals there have been sort of the worthy ones. I think, you know, Harry Kane's. There's probably 3 Harry Kane goals that stand out. One from corner where he slotted that in. That was a really good finish. The header, as mentioned earlier, the technique for that as well is ridiculous, by the way, because he's actually going backwards. And to generate that level of power whilst going backwards is very, very difficult. And then to actually steer it into the far corner in the way that he does was fantastic. And that particular day was just a really, really good day in itself. We were an early kickoff. I think we were on BT as well. And that just sort of set me up for the rest of my day and my evening, really. And I was sort of ready to go out after that and tell everybody that North London was lily white again. And then, not to mention, there's a goal where there's an aimless ball played down the line, and Dele Alli just decides, you know what, I'm going to chase this one down. He gets there, little flick through somebody's legs. It breaks to Harry Kane. Time stands still. And Harry Kane just decides from a ridiculous angle to curl one, and it just goes in off the post. I think Ospina was in goal, and he was just absolutely nowhere near it. You know, as I said earlier, I've never heard White Hart Lane that loud, like ever. So yeah, those Harry Kane goals, I think, will always live long in Tottenham fans' memories, regardless of who the opposition was. But I think it's just that extra special because of who it was against. So yeah, I think those goals from Harry Kane are certainly up there. And even his header in the 1-0 win at Wembley, it was a really good header. Brilliant ball in by Davis as well. And yeah, like I say, a really good header. And I always remember that goal because Nacho Monreal is appealing to the lino and the referee about a push from Harry Kane. But if you watch it, I don't know what he's moaning at, because Harry Kane just literally gets up early, generates again some really good power in the header, and as another one to go down in his collection for North London derbies. But I think, Joe, I know that there's a goal that you love from North London derbies, and I hope it's going to get a slight mention. So I'm going to pass this one on to you.
You've really got me thinking there, mate. I feel the pressure now. But look, well, I'll start off with Arsenal while I try and sieve out my brain. You really puzzled me there, mate. Oh, you've done me dirty. But now I think the one that hasn't been mentioned, it got mentioned a little bit earlier on, but not in the goals category. From an Arsenal perspective, is a Rosicky goal. That was a beauty goal, to be fair, I have to admit. I remember seeing that, and that just shut me up. And it takes a lot to shut me up, as people who as people who know me well know. So that really shut. I was like, oh, he's done us dirty like that, has he? It's a bit pure filth. But obviously, I'm gonna go straight on to Rafa van der Vaart. Just because I'm a bit annoyed you've mentioned him already, because he's my darling. And he just scores goals. Well, not scores anymore, unfortunately. Scored goals against them time after time, and he just loved it, and I loved it. As I was saying about Fabregas earlier, I was a hate relationship with Rafa. It's a love relationship, don't you worry. And I'm really glad, Nelson, you mentioned the Jermaine Defoe goal. Oh my goodness, that was filth. Like, I know we lost that game, but that was just naughty, absolutely naughty. He's done. It's just right in the top bracket as well. And like, Defoe is just a clinical finisher. He still is now, to be fair to the lad, and it was just always a joy to watch. He was always scored of goals. Oh, and I think I know what one you're thinking of Wes.
Go on.
And is it good old Chadley? Yes, my guy Nasir Chadley. I always say, I always think he was a bit underrated for us. I just think he was never like a starting player, but I think he was a fantastic squad player to have. And when he scored against Arsenal, you know what I love? A little bit of that, a little bit of a shush. And even if the goal was the most basic goal, and then you do the shushing after towards the Arsenal fans, I'll rate it 10 out of 10. I don't care. Just giving it large. Like, I love Chadley as well, just because I think with him, you knew you'd always get high work rate. You could tell it did matter to him, and he did really care about the club, I think, as well. Like, I do think he was a bit underrated for us and for what he did, because if you look at it, after he left us, his career did really kind of fall apart a bit. Really, it didn't really. I think that's fair to say. Obviously, I love the guy, and I think he would have been a fantastic squad player for us. He was. He showed it. So yeah, I'm good old Nasir. Nasir Chadley. Still not Van der Vaart level though, mate. But yeah, has anyone else got any other big contributions to North London Dart? Oh yeah, Wes is nodding his head. Sorry guys. Go on then, Wes.
One goal that we have missed out Kyle Walker.
Walker. Well, I think with that one,
I know
I
it's
think
terrific goalkeeping by Szczesny, who, you know, by his own admission, is the greatest goalkeeper in the world. But anybody that watches football will testify otherwise. But I think the fact that it was kind of out of nowhere from Kyle Walker, I didn't even know he even could shoot. That's how out of the blue it was. And he's just taken one touch. I think it was a spinning ball, and he's just taken one touch out and just hit it. I think, like I say, it's just come out of absolutely nowhere. And yeah, it's gone through Szczesny's hands. But I think as a strike itself, it was, you know, it was a fantastic goal, really. Or fantastic strike, should I say. Like I said, poor goalkeeping, but it's not his fault that Szczesny's got butterfingers. So, yeah, I think that goal, it just sort of popped up in my head, and I was like, yeah, do you know what? That's a bit of an underrated goal, but I kind of, like, with the poor goalkeeping, I can perhaps see why. And also a player that's gone unnoticed just for one beautiful moment at Wembley Stadium is Eric Lamela.
Oh, you beautiful man.
Beautiful man. When he did this particular moment at the end of the game to Jack Wilshere, I can't quite repeat what he said because there might be children watching, but he stood up to Jack Wilshere and told him where to go. And when he did this, I literally said, build him a statue outside our ground just for that. Like, knight him, give him everything, freedom of the city, you name it, he can have anything and everything, because that was just a beautiful moment. And it was a moment that actually, for me as a fan, we've gone like, right, we have finally, not only have we beaten you on the pitch and tore you apart, but we are now standing up to you, Arsenal. We're not having you anymore. Like, we're biting back, because for so long we've had it thrown at us all the time. And I think that was one of the first times where I felt that we were biting back. And it was just, like I say, a beautiful, beautiful moment.
Yeah, I have to agree with that. You know, I think we're quite big Lamela fans as well, aren't we? Obviously, I know he divides the fan base, but I think every single fan can agree that moment was spectacular. It wasn't even just that. It was, I think, as soon as he came on, because he came off the bench that game, first thing he done, literally played an absolutely sublime through ball, which I can't remember who it was to. It's either to probably Kane or Son, probably someone like that. We didn't score, and then the next contribution was almost killing Jack Wilshere. So
always,
you know
always
I mean?
a good sign. Always a good sign.
Exactly. So how I don't like, you know, absolute legend for me. Nelson, do you have any more contributions to goals, players, or matches? What you've managed to think of, or you having flashbacks to last night?
Yeah. In terms of goals, Aubameyang's curler in the 4-2 victory last season, because from a striker's perspective, I think that instinctive finish, the ball to be rolled to him and then to curl that into the bottom corner, was very impressive. I don't think Lloris was expecting that as well. I think in that moment, I think no one was expecting that, because I thought he would take a touch and then maybe try to set somebody else up. But he's instinctively just hit that and put that into the bottom corner. So that was a good goal. Players, I'll delve in a bit more deeper into Lacazette, because I mentioned, we talked about horrible players grasping the North London derby. And I think the only game that Lacazette hasn't contributed to a goal or assist, it was when you guys had, Wes mentioned the game 1-0 where Kane scored the header. But apart from that, I can remember that he's contributed a goal or assist in every North London derby. He did that yesterday. He scored in a 2-2 draw before half-time. He set up Ramsey at the final game at Wembley 2 seasons ago. In his very first North London derby, he set up Alexis Sanchez when we beat him 2-0. So he's basically effectively had, like, my point being that he turns up for these games. And like Wes mentioned, it's nice to see a foreign player just be able to grasp that, because it takes quite a while for players to get the culture of the club. But people like Van der Vaart and Lacazette and other foreign players that have just been able to grasp that in an instant, like, those players are kind of irreplaceable. I think. Yeah, I think in terms of goals, they ain't got no more contributions, but no, this forever #1 derby. I just put that out there, #1 derby.
Yeah, I as I said earlier, I fully agree with you on that, Nelson. North London derby is the best derby in England. If you don't agree, come at me, and I won't fight you on it because I'm not very strong. But I'll argue it. I'll argue it. Let's put it that way. A nice little debate. But anyway, guys, that wraps up our North London derby special. You know, I think we all quite enjoyed that one. Living through the memories of all the games, all the players, Van der Vaart, obviously Moussa Dembele for Wes. But make sure you give us a like on YouTube. Comment your favourite players from the games, you know, your favourite matches and your favourite goals as well, whether or not you're a Tottenham or Arsenal fan. Make sure you subscribe to the channel as well for more, because hopefully we'll be doing more specials in the future as well. Turn on the notification bell as well so you can see when we post. Remember to say that. We make sure you follow us on Spotify as well, because all of our podcasts are now going on there. And follow us on social media at Only One Hotspur. But apart from that, up the Spurs. North London is white. Absolutely fantastic.
Up the Spurs.
One more thing. I'd just like to, again, our thoughts and prayers are with Serge Aurier and his family. With the loss of his brother, tragic news to hear this morning. So all our thoughts and prayers and condolences are with his family and Serge right now. We wish you well. So thanks for having me, guys.
100%.